want it now and I ain't never gon' back down. I want it now and I ain't never gon' back down. I want it now and I ain't never gon' back down. I want it now and I ain't never gon' back down. I am no regular citizen. Do you understand what you witnessing? You cannot tell what the difference is. I want it all and I'm winning it. I do not care about opinions. Time to make a few decisions so I can take a position. I'ma go get it, I'm punching and kicking. I keep on moving, they offer me. Just do it and stop at our talking G. I'm not expressing no modesty. I can't see nobody stopping me. If there's a problem, I gotta solve it. Straight to the top, I can't see myself falling. I gotta grab it, there's no time for stalling. Number one stunner, don't have other options. Now I'm fired up. I'm sorry, brother, your time's up. I see the top and I climb up. I came from the ashes, I rise up. Rise up, rise up. I want it now, I gotta rise up. Rise up. I want it now, I gotta rise up. Rise up. I want it now, I gotta rise up. Rise up. I want it now, I want it now, and I ain't never gon' back down. I want it now, and I ain't never gon' back down. I gotta go for the gold. I need to switch up the mode. I'm gonna win on my own. I'm in a whole nother zone. I reached the pinnacle. I don't have time, this is critical. It's time to finish you. I don't care who I just did it to. I gotta go for the gold. I need to switch up the mode. I'm gonna win on my own. I'm in a whole nother zone. I reached the pinnacle. I don't have time, this is critical. It's time to finish you. I don't care who I just did it to. I want it now, I gotta rise up, rise up. I want it now, I gotta rise up, rise up. I want it now, I gotta rise up, rise up. I want it now, I gotta rise up, rise up. I want it now, I gotta rise up, rise up. I want it now, I gotta rise up, rise up. I want it now, I gotta rise up, rise up. I want it now, I gotta. I want it now and I ain't never gon' back down. I want it now and I ain't never gon' back down. I want it now and I ain't never gon' back down. I want it now and I ain't never gon' back down. Said I'm fired up. I'm sorry your time's up. I see the top and I climb up. Came from the ashes, I rise up. Rise up, rise up. I want it now, I gotta rise up. Rise up, I want it now, I gotta rise up. Rise up, I want it now, I gotta rise up. Rise up, I want it now, I gotta rise up.
Live from the virtual Kansas Speedway, we say good evening, sim racing fans, and welcome to the round of 8 as RaceSpot TV's coverage of the 2020 Full Throttle Real Sim Racing Cup Series powered by Boosted Playoffs continue with tonight's Boosted.Club 125. And happy that you're with us, as always, on a Monday night right here on RaceSpot TV and the iRacing Esports Network. As always, it's myself, Evan Pasoko, alongside with Justin Prince and JP. Now, through 6 rounds of this postseason, only 4 races left in tonight, as we've willed what was a playoff field that once 16 drivers strong, now down to 8, presents our first opportunity to see somebody lock themselves in to that winner-take-all finale at Phoenix in a couple of weeks.
And it's been an exciting postseason so far, with plenty of twists and turns, to say the very least. But tonight, of course, back to the mile-and-a-half circuit. 2 of them, in fact, in the round of 8. 2 very distinct mile-and-a-half circuits. And don't forget about the track that's going to end up being the cutoff in Martinsville. There's going to be a lot of pressure for this week and next for these 8 drivers on the left side of your screen to try and make sure they're good to go to try and get into the championship form.
Hey, we talked about this after the Roval, but it was Brian Chambers, Eric Stanford, Thomas J. George, and Joseph Tice who were the drivers that were eliminated at the end of the round of 12. So once again, we reset. Daniel Eberhardt and Andrew Ferdinand get 3 bonus points, courtesy of their race wins in the round of 12. Everybody else, therefore, 3 points behind them, and we will go from 8 to 4 before we fight for the championship in Avondale, Arizona in just a little bit. You talked about this round, Justin, Kansas and Texas. It's the same thing we've been talking about for the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. Very important because Martinsville on November the 2nd, the regular, I guess the finale for this round and the penultimate race on the year, we raced there earlier this season. It set an RSR record for cautions and caution laps. So that race likely going to be messy. So get it taken care of tonight. Get a win, lock yourself in, and you don't have to worry when we go racing at the Paperclip.
And even then, you cannot afford any bad races. Best example, the driver who finished 12th in the point standings the last round, Joseph Tice, had 2 sub-top 30 finishes with some rough runs in 2 of the races, as mentioned. If you have that happen for any race, including even just one, your championship hopes are done. And at this point, do you want to rely on a short track? I don't think you quite do, to say the very least. If you can get it done here tonight or get it done at Texas, I think you're going to be more calmer than, say, if you have to go to Martinsville and have to win it.
Yeah, the only, short track that they want to worry about is Phoenix, and even that's not really a short track, but kind of races like one, especially in the configuration that's still here on the service, and we'll talk more about that as it carries on. But tonight's challenge is Kansas Speedway. Drivers, as always, in their single car qualifying session, as we are now in the 4th to last race of 2020, and it is one of the most unique of those intermediate racetracks, Justin, from right above and from the blimp shot we've got right now as we circle above the Q session. Doesn't look like anything out of the ordinary, but it's going to be a very different race tonight compared to what we're going to be seeing next week at Texas. And the main thing is the groove here up against that outside wall. And as we saw over the weekend with this package, the car is going to be all over each other.
Yeah, it could be difficult to pass after about 20 laps or so. It's going to be important to tire save as well as be patient to have momentum. Keep in mind as well, the track temperature, 109 degrees Fahrenheit at the moment. That's the hottest anyone has had to deal with all week. Times across the iRacing service in terms of temps has usually been around the 81 to 95 degree range. So there's going to be a lot to try and deal with tonight. Being patient, trying to plan out your moves properly, trying to be patient, and don't forget, trying to make sure you manage those tires so you don't burn them off and drop to the back of the field or get freight trained.
That mention about the weather, of course, very important. You saw it there. We're looking at much hotter conditions than what we saw over the weekend with the NASCAR Cup Series race, where track temps at about 109 degrees Fahrenheit, 73 degrees atmospheric temperature. You're not going to have those cool conditions, so they might slide and wear a little bit more. All things that these drivers have to consider. Kansas, I think, though, it's always been a fun track, and of course, it's going to be a unique challenge, as is every race, in a Cup car, in this RSR Full Throttle Cup Series, and especially in this 2020 package. But again, tonight's big, because after this, you really only have Texas. I mean, you could feel comfortable going into Martinsville and say, listen, I could probably win that race and get myself in, but you just don't want to put it off to that. So I'm not going to say that Kansas and Texas are not going to provide us drama. We have seen a lot of drama over these last couple of rounds, Justin, in the postseason. But I think drivers who think they're going to be fast tonight probably are. And you talk about guys like Tice making mistakes. This is not a race that you want to blow an opportunity on.
Not at all at this point. These drivers are going to make sure, or have to at least, they minimize mistakes. If they have any, they need to recover and fairly quickly by the end of the race. In other words, tonight's going to be important. Track positions also going to be important, Evan, as I think we're about to see.
The practice session and now qualifying has drawn to a close. Let's go trackside and take a look at your Boosted.Club starting grid. Again, playoff drivers highlighted in red. Andrew Ferdinand will lead us to the green flag. Of course, snapped an 11-race winless drought last week at the Charlotte Motor Speedway Roval. He's accompanied by Agnel Phillip, non-playoff driver Sam Nieto third, with Daniel Eberhardt, his biggest counterpart, the championship right there fourth, and then Adam Benefiel, Kyle Trudell, David Washington, the playoff drivers up through there, and then a host of non-playoff cars, including Eric Stanford, P10.
Brian Chambliss in 11th spot with a 30 flat, with Matthew Mara starting alongside him in row 6. Grant Davis and Michael Araya, two teammates, will start 13th and 14th for Flat Out Motorsports in the playoffs. Daniel Scott starts tonight from 15th with Jared Mogart 16th. Sean Kalis, Kyle Kamer, John Fowler, and Michael Kuczynski round out your top 20.
And continuing on through a long way down for Dylan Jones, 23rd in the running order, not where he was planning on starting the race tonight, but of course with no time in queue, he'll be the first driver on a provisional. He should be able to get to the field. Malik Ray, big name on the grid in this one, and I'm not certain though that the number 51 is going to take the grid. The rest of the provisionals: McBride, George, Burke, Soa, and I think we're going to have Mosier and Valderrama on the very final row. 30 drivers taking the green flag here from the Kansas Speedway. And we can talk some more specifics about this track, Justin, as the field rolls. We talked about how they're going to race it. It's that 17 to 20 degrees of progressive banking. It's even progressive on the front stretch from 9 to 11 degrees is what makes this racetrack so unique, clocking in at 1.5 miles in length. So tonight's 125 lap contest going to be 177.5 miles.
And of course, the higher on the track you go, the faster you usually go. Keep in mind as well, the short run, bottom of the track, expect to be fairly quick, but as the tires start to warm up and work their way in, expect drivers to migrate up to the top end quickly. If you don't find a hole up the top once that line starts to shift, you're going to likely be dropping like a rock. If you time up your moves wrong, if you try and make a pass, especially to the middle, let's say, you're going to drop to the back of the line. It's going to be important to time things up at this racetrack tonight, especially with the pressure for some of these playoff drivers this evening.
We've talked about what it takes to advance. We started by saying to be a top 10 car, you'll be fine. Then we started saying get some top 5s, 1 or 2 of them in the round, and you'll be able to make it this far. But now we go from 8 to 4 of the 63 different drivers that have competed over 2020. I think if you want to fight for a championship, the objective has to be win. And you've got 9 of them, actually even more, 11 represented on the front 2 rows between just Eberhardt and Ferdinand. The pace car going to be down at Indo Field in the hands of last week's winner, the 88 of Andrew Ferdinand. We're down to the round of 8 as we say, let's go racing from Kansas. Lap 1 to the 88 of Ferdinand, but look at the battle behind. 2, 3 wide throughout the field. It has been Sam Nieto digging on the inside of the front row as Adam Benefiel decided to tuck in line behind the 88. That's high to low as well for the 98 of David Washington. Started 7th. He wants 3rd.
All right, that top line working its way up fairly quickly. That's to be expected with how this track works. Already the bottom line already dying off and fast. But you know who's coming up through the field quickly? Take a little wild guess. It's Malik Ray, up +8 in 2 laps.
He wasn't sure if we were going to see the number 51 on track. Of course, a race winner from just a few weeks ago, the playoff opener at Darlington Raceway, his 3rd win of the season on a limited schedule. And of course, a driver trying to get maybe a little bit of practice in anticipation for the next round of that eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series coming up tomorrow night. He's stuck behind the 26 machine right now, though, of Daniel Scott.
Yeah, he is not waiting to be aggressive here. He wants some track position quickly. He's willing to use this middle line because that's the thing. If you can utilize it pretty well, you can gain some ground up that middle line for about a few laps. Then the top line is going to be crucial. So at the very least, I think he's just trying to clear by Scott. Then I would expect him to try and maybe find a hole here before he kills his tires off and fairly quickly here. Oh, wow, the leaders are still side by side with still Sam Nieto stuck on the bottom.
And you talked about the inside dying off. A lot of drivers behind, you can see there's nobody down on the inside until you get all the way back to the 24 of Grant Davis. So they have all abandoned it, gone to the outside, but Sam Nieto doesn't have much of an option here because when David Washington went low to high, he tucked in line behind Benefield. There's not much of a spot there. You can see he's better into the corner, but slower off, and that's kind of the trademark definition of what the inside line is going to be all night long. So if he could just clear the 83, maybe find enough room to get up top and squeeze in line. But I think realistically, this ends for Nieto in fourth, as both those cars heading outside, I think, are going to get past him. There's Benefield clear, but not daring to go low. He'll stay in line for the moment. Nieto down on the white line.
And here's the thing, it's much more tighter on the corner exit if you try and wheel it from the bottom rather than wheel it up towards the top. The counterpoint is, of course, you're up against the wall. You're likely going to have to try and protect that right rear tire to make sure it doesn't snap around as well. The right front, especially 3 and 4 more so on that side. Keep in mind, it's fairly windy as well. Southeast mile-an-hour winds towards 8 miles an hour rather. Around this racetrack, it's going to be tighter today in 3 and 4, looser in 1 and 2 because of the wind.
A bit of a wiggle that time. You can see on this shot how much better Washington is outside, and kind of as we expected. Sam Nieto, valiant play for the race lead, but that charge to the inside does end in position number 4. Now on board with Agno Phillip 5th. He was maybe hoping that Nieto was going to stay on the bottom and try to make that work out, try to steal that spot from him on the outside. Instead, he will decide to fill the gap. And now your race leaders are single file up on the outside line. And there's some side-by-side way down the road, Mogard and Cato, but it looks like everybody right now riding and kind of just playing a game of, the caboose per se up on the outside line. Everybody holding their position and just trying to stay clean.
This is to be expected. This has been the trend throughout the week, right? But it's not impossible to pass, keep in mind, before someone jumps in on that. Because if you get a good run on corner exit in turn 4, Evan, and say, get to somebody's outside down the front straightaway, and then take away that outside line by turn 1, and then keep it side by side on turn 2 exit, you're able to pick off that position and start a freight train effect for the car you try and make a pass. So it's more so about the timing now, if you want to gain positions, and how you wheel this car against the outside wall. The faster you're on corner exit, the more comfortable you are to build up momentum for that exit, the more likely you're going to be able to try and build up momentum. The more you check up like that, let's say, to avoid smacking the wall, the more it lets everyone else try and make a move.
And again, those playoff drivers will have those pink accented splitters, windshield banners, and spoilers. They will also be highlighted in red on all of the graphics. Right now, your playoff cars run 1, 2, 3, 7, 9, 11, 17, and 29. And the driver in 29th, last in the race, is Dylan Jones, who did not make the start of the race. That's why he is 23 seconds behind. Thomas George, the only driver behind him on timing and scoring. George did not take to the green flag. Of course, notable Thomas George eliminated from the playoffs last week as we watched this battle involving Trudell and Billy Gray to fight for 11th and 12th.
Just announced earlier tonight, actually, in regards to Trudell, a brand new team for enjoying Extreme Performance Motorsports. That's the same group as Michael Kaczynski, who's in 15th position. So, changing up his team alliances, he was running as an independent in that blue car prior to tonight, so a chance for them to show what they can do. Oh, by the way, his teammates coming and gaining a lot of time on him, in fact, now, because that pass from Cato.
And nobody needs to remind me in specific that Kyle Trudell is good on the racetrack because he's the one who won 2 out of the 4 RealSimRacing IROC Series races, and including our season finale, which allowed him to squeak out the points championship over myself by 5 points. So good to see Kyle get linked up with the team. Good to see, more teams continue to grow in this series. I mean, when we talk about the big name teams, you typically think of kind of Flat Out, Aegis, and Steelhorse. Those are really the only teams that have put in a full schedule. Steelhorse did not have 4 cars in every race this year, but Flat Out and Aegis have, so they are battling in really what is a fantastic team points that has Flat Out 82 points ahead of Aegis. They'll likely win the team championship, not that it comes with anything this year, but certainly some bragging rights for a team like Flat Out to come into this series and perform so well. And you're battling, or you're watching a battle for the race lead. Sam Nieto back at a number 4 spot has dropped off a little bit from David Washington, though. Those 3 playoff cars pull it away just a little bit, and they're stacking up at a bumper the Shell Pennzoil Ford.
Yeah, Nieto, I think, pushing hard in those first few laps. Going to hurt him now a bit for the long run, and that's the game you have to sometimes play right. Benefits a short run can end up giving you negatives a long run. You have to also be more patient to do so. Michael Mosier and Tom Moreno, though, unscheduled stops here from 2029 decided to duck down off the racetrack.
And there's the look off of the back end. His car is there on pit road. Michael Mosier mentioned down pit road, and Tom Moreno, the second car involved in this. Yep. So you have to think they came together, and we'll look to get a second look and a replay. There was no caution, so this race stays green, and I believe those 2 cars spun on the back straightaway. We'll get a second look in just a moment. No yellow, we stay green. That was a battle for 27.
And keep in mind, you smack the wall here even a little bit, that can hurt you a ton with this racetrack, with this package, because it hurts your ability to have straight line speed because you're losing aerodynamic performance. You lose aerodynamic performance, you're going to be going backwards. Both of those cars not aerodynamically sound because, as you've seen, Moreno pushed up, collected Mosier, both of them slammed hard to the wall, but because they're at the very back of the field with no other cars around them, no trigger for the caution flag.
And depending on who you are, you're either happy about that or not, because if there were 3 cars involved, there would have been a manual caution from the tower, no matter where the incident is on track. But because it was only 2, and because iRacing did not throw the yellow, we stay green, and we're uninterrupted now through 18 laps of competition from Kansas. And there's the onboard look with Matt Barra. Talked about him and his team are running in the number 17 position right now. That is -5, though, from the get-go for the driver of the 23 Toyota. Kind of funny, maybe a bit of a preview seeing a number 23 on the side of a Toyota Camry in a NASCAR Cup Series car. But Mara, as always, giving us that perspective from his sim rig, and always using those VR goggles, going to try to make up for some of the lost ground.
Very subtle, Evan, to say the least. But the one thing I noticed, though, when he was at the Rover more so, is you see that little tablet there. Before, that wasn't quite there in the past, where if he, say, is having temp issues, he might sometimes have that black box you see in the right-hand corner of his monitor, which is also going to be the same thing in his VR headset. Cover up where that oil temp is or his steering column. So, let's say he's wondering about that and can't precisely look around to it. He might be able to glance down a little bit, try and see if he can look at those gauges, because it's the exact duplicate of what he has on his actual race car. So that's that extra little bit of pressure there and sensibility. It looks like actually glancing down a little bit now on his relatives as well to see, okay, what's going on with the cars in front of me, especially since he's losing touch to the main pack, him and the cars in front of him.
Yeah, so that tablet is showing exactly what's on the digital dash, and of course it's doing him no benefit now, but I think it's a good visual for us to see it blinking right there. That's him on the revs. I mean, he's way up there. Let's take a second look with Michael Kaczynski and Rhett McBride. I think that's the 30 of Kaczynski happening outside. And as they came off of turn 4, where is the 5 car of McBride going? Right down and into the grass. McBride was one of those drivers, Justin, who had really unfortunate luck earlier this year in the playoffs. And I have to think that for him, it was some sort of hardware failure. Maybe a screen went out, and that's why he just kept that thing turned to the left and then locked it up. Another incident, no yellow, and the 5 car has towed to pit road.
He's already out of the race car, too. Had to have been a technical issue with the steering wheel not even moving in the grass. Tough break, but Rhett McBride, the car actually looked like it was going to clear the corner fairly well if it wasn't for that. But the late pack, though, has 4 cars again. Daniel Eberhardt's one of the quicker cars in the lead pack at the moment. They're running 31.9s right now. In the back of the field, they're running 32 3s and 6s, for comparison's sake. That's already almost 2 seconds of fall off, and we're only 23 laps in.
And it's noticeable now as we look at the lead pack that a fourth car has joined the breakaway, and it is Daniel Eberhardt. He had been running in fifth after he started this race actually in fourth, but dropped the spot after it was David Washington and Adam Benefield kind of blowing through the field early. And we talked about it was a top three breakaway, but Eberhardt was stuck behind Agnell Phillip. He was able to make that pass. And now he makes this lead breakaway 4 of your playoff cars. It'll drop Agnell Phillip back to that number 5 position. And it is a 1, 2, 3, 4 breakaway.
Phillip's still hanging out a little bit as well there, too. So some great jobs here for these drivers, especially Eberhardt, to wheel his way to this main group. The main thing is going to be, though, it's 125 laps tonight. It's a little bit shorter than the usual distance we've seen here and there in a couple races, yes, but the main thing's going to be, it's going to be tight on fuel. The reason I say that, though, Evan, is because you get a caution flag here. It's a one-stopper. It's going to be extremely difficult to try and even have a one-stopper under green with the fuel because you can get, depending on the weather, the key thing, the weather conditions and how much you get off the throttle, to about 64 to 66 laps. In a cooler track condition, you have as little as 57. In other words, the fuel window is going to be massively shifted around as this race goes on and the run continues, to the point where you have to wonder if anyone's going to even think about it. I've seen in some cases, Evan, though, drivers not even thinking about it even when they top off on fuel, but an extra 3 or 4 laps total from a quick caution and still do a two-stopper in the end of the race.
And you have to wonder if you're one of these drivers in line up front, can you save a little bit by being in the wake of the cars in front of you? You can see Daniel Eberhardt. You see how high the RPMs are as he goes off and into the corner. Looks like not really getting any lower than 7,500 when he's in. And as he comes off, you'll see those things get pretty close to redlining as he follows Washington all the way down. Bit of a shot to the bumper there. Nearly 8,500 RPMs into one as we run on board with him in that virtual visor cam. So curious if any of that drafting could help those drivers make up that little bit of a difference. You talked about the weather. We're working with hot conditions today,
which may make it a little bit somewhat realistic to try the save, but at the same time, don't expect it. Because while you can gain a lot of time, yes, it's a lot of risk to actually try and do so with this track in its history of top-offs in NIS competition, especially. Into the wall, though, Washington, way too tight in corner entry. Just destroyed the right side of his car.
Yeah, that was a pretty hard bit of contact as he went into the corner. He just missed his entry point. And you can see right front damage on the 98 car. Is it going to slow him down? Let's see if Fridaj and Benefield pull away just a little bit here. Of course, he's going to have to try to work to get that momentum back, but here comes Eberhardt to the outside and side by side in a battle for third position. And as long as the 90 doesn't overdrive it, he'll use those 20 degrees to drive it off at 2. And Daniel Eberhardt now race high P3, and I don't think that David Washington's car feeling good. That thing has fallen off the pace.
He is at least 2, 3, 4 miles an hour slower now in the middle of the apex than everyone else in front of him. Look at that. You scuff it into the fence that hard, you crunch it in that hard, you just lose all that straight line speed, and that quarter panel is crushed in as well, which is going to make him looser too. A tiny crinkle can cost you half a tenth, Evan, in theory. A big crinkle, a few tenths. Battle for the race lead.
To the inside, it comes the 83 of Benefield. The bottom has not worked out much for anybody today, and it will not pay off that time through. He will tuck back in line, reset, and try again. So it was a move by Benefield. You mentioned it's not impossible to make passes. Here's another battle. David Washington again on the bottom. And maybe if the cars try to pass him just, it had to go low, he'd have some sort of a chance to hold them off. But on the bottom, he is a sitting duck. Phillip is by, Nieto is by, Tice is by, and he will squeeze up in front of Brian Chambliss. Another one of those drivers just eliminated from the playoffs. This is not good for the 98 of Washington. It's kind of fine where he is right now, Justin, in this bubble. But once he gets back to 11th, then I'm concerned. Because then you have 3 more playoff cars, Davis, Lariah, and Trudell back to back to back. Then you're concerned when you're getting passed by playoff cars, whereas right now, you don't want to be falling back, but the non-playoff drivers aren't as critical.
Surprised by the decision there from Chambliss to try and cut to the bottom there, but I think this entire grouping is going to try and pass him quickly. Washington is really struggling now with that damage, obviously. At this rate, Washington needs a caution, Evan. If he doesn't get one, he probably finishes in the back half of the field because he is that slow in corners and that slow down the straightaways because of all that damage. He's losing momentum and doesn't have the grip he needs now with that quarter panel to have any shot to keep up with the rest of the cars up in front.
He would really be somebody who would benefit from this race and getting a little bit crazy and having some cautions. As you can see, even behind him, the stack up he's causing is going to open the door for Stanford high, Malik Ray low. We are 3 wide for position number 8, and Malik Ray the slide job. He made the pass on Chambliss, slid up in front of the 19, the 51 Toyota on a mission, as he is now plus 16. In position 8. I gotta think Chambliss was a little bit patient there with Washington. It cost him 2. Don't expect Malik Ray to give you the same courtesy.
Yeah, that's not a surprise with that aggressive move. He is someone that can try and stick it. And in some cases, he'll get leeway. In other cases, drivers will just go full throttle and say, why are you parking the bus on lap number 36? But here's the thing, you need to be that cutthroat at this track, right? It's difficult to pass. You need to be able to clear on by to be able to make the move. Looking like Washington knocked him in the same pleasure here.
And to the apron he goes, still on board with Stanford on the right-hand side. Washington loses a spot. Malik Ray made that look really easy on the front straightaway. You typically think of the slide job as a move in the center of the corner, and that's what the 51 did, but I thought he was going to lose time off. He was still better, and he pulls a couple of car lengths. Now it's Stanford's turn to try. He'll go to the inside. He can decide to hold the bottom through, or he can slide up in front. There's the move to take the line away. Washington's going to turn him. Stanford down and in the grass. He's trying to wheel it to hang on. No caution for the moment. We stay green. Man, oh man.
What in the world are some of these people thinking? Just wait until the front stretch and get to the outside. What a save by Stanford, but this has just opened up the crazy gates here. Everyone's now trying to take Washington 3 wide after seeing that.
I think Washington, again, just wanted to cross him over, and I'm not even sure that that would have been the right move to make because he knows he's slower, but then it was Chambliss trying to pass him. The 98 hesitated, came back up, and hooked the 19 to Stanford. It was a great job by that 19, as you mentioned, to hang on to that race car, but I think that's showing these drivers that David Washington is not going to give you much courtesy. Grant Davis, I mentioned, when he gets back to those other playoff cars is when this is going to get critical. Grant Davis, now the 4th highest running playoff car, as through all of that chaos, he goes up to position 8. Washington is down to 10th with Lariah and Trudell only a step behind. Also looking hungrily in the 7, nearly got moved by Bradley Burke, who went to his inside, and they touched on the apron.
What a bad slide job move now from Mogart, nearly slammed into Washington's door. What are some of these drivers doing here? They're just frying their tires, and some of them are going to have to pit soon. Just take a deep breath and think big picture here.
Mogart, of course, non-playoff car. He apologized to David Washington, but Washington was not lifting again. And the 98 machine, you could say, listen, just let him go. I mean, he knows he's slower, but these points are huge. David Washington wants to race for the Full Throttle Cup in 2020. And driving like Joe Logano on Sunday or Ryan Newman on most weekends, probably his best bet to do so. Mogart doesn't go for the crossover. That time he'll hold. Let's take a second look on board with Stanford. There's the contact from behind, and that is a lot of grass to go through, Justin. Right here, he accomplished one thing. That was not spinning on the pit road. That would have penalized him. And then the next step was, of course, safely blending up onto the racetrack. He did that. Mogard, attempt number 2. Still can't get in front of Washington. The 98 car being pesty.
Yeah, and I think he was just trying to move a little bit away from the wall to make sure he didn't slam it. Because here's one of the deceptive parts of this track, right? If you're running the top line, of course, there's that jet out down the backstretch where you see some of the American ethanol paint. There's about 2 feet that pops out where you can smack the wall. That in turn hurt, I think, the double zero a little bit to make sure he didn't slide up into him, and now he's getting freight trained by everybody else.
He's all on his own here, and he's going to lose out. That's Burke at a 95. He'll get through. The 44 of Lariah now, playoff car. He will also get through. He'll hold for the moment on board with Cato. Similar situation to what we saw earlier with Sam Nieto. He's not that much slower than these cars, but the inside doesn't stand a chance. And this is not done yet. He's already dropped about a half a dozen. There's more coming because Matt Mara right there on the bumper. Mogard's going to end up 16th by the time this is done. No, the 23 into the wall. Mara overdrove the entry. Takes himself out of this battle. It wasn't a huge hit. He'll reset and try again. And now further up the running order, it's Burke to the inside.
And I don't know if this is going to work either. Lariah also trying this, but man, this has been some crazy fighting so far. They have lost 3-4 seconds with all this scrapping because of how aggressive it is. But as you mentioned, Washington can't afford to back down. He needs these points. The thing is, too, some drivers' mentalities is, I'll let drivers go if they get there and can pass me in a lap. If it takes them a couple laps to pass, so be it. It looks like Washington's saying, I'll let you go if you get a run on me. No one's been able to get a run on him, and no one's trying on the outside still.
Yeah, that's the big if. You know, he's going to make a verdict on board with Mara now to the inside of Lariah. Side by side, a couple of rows deep in front of him. Make it 3 rows deep if you count the battle that Mara's in. But Cato missed the corner. Mogard pushes. What a squeeze as the 95 of Burke barely made it through.
I'm surprised someone's not trying the undercut at this point, because we are approaching that window for the 2-stop realistically. But eventually someone's going to have to do it here. They're losing tons and tons and tons of time to the rest of the pack, at least 6/10 extra fall-off because of how hard they're scrapping here. You have to realize you've got to do something if you want to get in front of Washington, even if it is a 1 or 2 lap difference. Tice has been put in the wall just now by Ray.
Yeah, that was a battle inside of the top 5. I was about to mention that it could be a critical battle. And now you can see the one car slow. Malik Ray squeezed him a little bit in 3. Tice got into the wall, gave a sarcastic thanks over the radio. Malik Ray on the charge. He'll slide job Agnell Phillip. He now up to position number 5. But the front of the field has changed a little bit since we last checked in. It is once more a top 3 breakaway. Once David Washington fell off, that 4th car dropped out of the equation. Frenage 1, Benefield 2, Eberhardt 3 are 2 seconds ahead of everybody else, and there's that touch between the 51 and the 1.
Bit of a late art. Pushes the 1 up, try to squeeze them, try and take advantage as much of that progressive banking as he could. Ends up giving Tice significant damage now in the right front. That's going to kill his race until they get to caution if they do so. Now, we have to see how things break down here for how the strategies fare. If this forces him to try and go for an earlier stop. No one's ducked down quite yet. At least some drivers are being a bit careful here with how crazy this track can be. The only drivers I think who even come down to pit, in fact, just one scheduled stop for Steve Soa in the 75.
The Soa in, his service has been completed. Mosier, his teammate, has also been down pit road, but of course that was the incident earlier in this race. Tom Morano, Rhett McBride, both out of competition following their bits of contact early. So of the cars planning to. Only so has been in, but as I say that, Daniel Scott over the radio with 50 laps down and 75 laps to go says that he will come down pit road. That will be from back in the field position number 19. Malik Ray also going to pick up an additional spot. He is around Sam Nieto and in fourth. So the only cars he needs to catch is those three. Battle for the Race League big picture, and the battle from David Washington on is underneath bottom left. That's going to be 10th on back.
I'm still shocked no one's even thinking about ducking down this grouping here to get fresh tires and get an undercut. The only realistic thought is they feel they might try it. Here comes a bit of a move to the outside. Throttle nearly squeezed the fence.
He's trying to force his way through. We've seen how difficult Washington has been, letting cars go on the bottom of the racetrack. So the 7th thought, hey, maybe I can catch him sleeping. And honestly, Throttle had the spot. I mean, that car was to the outside, but Washington just turned up on him, cut him off. The 7 cut him a break, and now we'll see how he tries it again. He is all over the bumper again. We're talking about the battle left bottom corner. There it is now, full screen. And look at Bradley Burke go. The 95 takes 2 spots from turn 4 to turn 1 as he saw Washington and Throttle messing around with each other, and he took advantage.
They're spending so much time focusing on one another, and with the speed from Washington hurting them, that all happened here. But starting breaking some draft here up towards the lead pack, it looks like. Freenosh broke some draft, trying to gain some time now at Benefield, taking the shortcut. You can do that. Most of the drivers also finding that's working. I think this cloud might be partly to do with it.
Now you can see very dark, a little bit more sun down on the left-hand side of your screen, down that back straightaway, but both corners seem to be in the shade right now. That's going to affect, of course, track conditions, track temp, mix things up. Mogard will squeeze in between Stanford. And I can tell you firsthand that if David Washington does not want you to pass him, he will not let you, as the 2-car Sam Nieto down pit road. One of your first major players is in from P5 because I was stuck behind David Washington on about 40-lap newer tires at a truck race at Gateway 2 weeks ago, and I could not pass him. He Ryan Newman me, and it did not do my strategy very well, but he's very good at holding that line and making his, territory known. It's going to be 4 tires to the fuel for Nieto in and out. And Justin, I was starting to think as we got later into the run with the lack of cars down pit road that maybe it was implying they were going to be trying to stretch it for 1, but presumably Nieto giving up 5th would confirm that all these cars aren't going to pit. Maybe they don't divide this race, though, in thirds, and at some point they're going to go for a short pit.
It's still tight, I think. Just did the math. Halfway point is 62.5 laps, and that's right at the number for the average fuel run. The thing is, do we get to that average fuel mark is going to be the thing for these cars. They've ran a lot on the top. Some of them have been near full throttle this entire run. Some of them have been trying the bottom here and there to try different fuel marks, which can help you save fuel a little bit, but can lose you track time and burn up your tires. A couple different factors at this point. And the tough part is, there's going to be a lot of leeway here now for the second pit stop for some of the cars. Some of them are now coming in, the 95 and the 44, along with the 7 indicating they're coming in from that group who was held up by Washington.
Yeah, so that's Burke from 9th, the Throttle from 10th. The call going to be the same for all of them on 4 tires. And
Throttle just going
and
in the back
7 into the cone and now off it into the grass after he... I don't know if it was the 7 too hot, Justin, or Burke very conservative, but Throttle just ran him over, locked up the brakes, and he is off in the grass. That's disastrous for the 7.
I think he wheel hopped. He shifted down, and that helped snap him around. Normally, the engine braking can help you, but he might have just over-revved. That caused him to just overcook the corner. And now, significant front nose damage is going to hurt Throttle the rest of the race. Burke is going to be hurt a little bit with the back end damage. Both of the races now in significant trouble.
Top 10 cars-ish with damage, and I think Throttle going to hurt even more for two reasons. One, front-end damage is oftentimes more critical than rear-end damage, and two, he did not get onto pit road safely, so he's going to have a handful of penalties that he has to serve, plus damage if he opts to get that repaired, so he may not even think about it. Daniel Eberhard to be out, trying that trick we saw implemented by that 7 just a little bit ago. Looked like he tried to sneak to the outside of the 83 of Adam Benefiel, but wasn't able to do so, as Andrew Freitas says on the radio, a pit stop that will put him just in 3 laps shy of halfway home, that he is coming down pit road. He's led this whole race. No drafting help. That could be the difference. He locks it up to pit road speed of 45 miles an hour. That was a bit close. And now that Benefiel and Eberhard ride 1-2, can they squeeze 2 more laps out of this thing to get halfway? They are coming this time. I'm not sure they're going to be able to go without another stop.
If it is, it's going to be extremely tight. Ray also coming in. This is going to be probably within a couple laps for some of these drivers on the fuel numbers here. Eberhard's though still keeping on going.
1 lap, I mean, could be the difference. You're on board with Freitas sitting in the stall, left side tires up. He's getting his 4. He will now be off and away. And of course, the sooner you pit, the better you get to the fresh tires. You will have a bit of a plus on the undercut. But for Daniel Eberhard, this time by would be 62 laps complete, 63 laps to go. Typically, Joe would say saving 8 lap is not a big ask, but in these cars with this much on throttle time, I don't know. Eberhard is in for service right-hand side.
Now it becomes the note-taking situation of, will these cars be able to fully make it? We talked about the top end being up to 66, but that was with clutch and coasting for some drivers on a cool track. It's a hot track, so there is a chance people can try and stretch it, Evan. It's going to be tough. That's the thing. And we know for a fact at least half the field is going to not be in that mark because they only made it 57 to 60.
And for those drivers, again, you mentioned, I mean, they could come down pit road now and probably make it to the end of a 62 laps to go in this race. As you can see, Malik Ray, in fact, one of the drivers who pitted earlier, is in a good spot. Ross Cato cycling through to the race lead. Going to be very short-lived because he is down pit road and he missed pit road. The 50 is wrecking on the entry to pit road. He will save that race car. Only he and Eric Stanford had not pitted. There's Cato. He was way ahead of the 19, but he just about fenced it. He was way too hot. Now they're a little bit of miscommunication in the pits as well. Not a good trip down for these guys. Here's the onboard with the 50.
Yeah, it was really... wow. That is way too much steering, first of all. He just completely overshot how you enter the corner there, or into the pits, rather. You're not going to get more rotation, though, if you flip your wheel a full 900 degrees just about to the left. That is how you cause your wheel to lock up for the tires. Since, obviously, you can't get that rotation in a real World Cup car, that's going to really cost him now with an unsafe pit entrance at the very minimum.
Yeah, well before that, the tires stop actually turning anymore. It'd be nice if we could pop those suckers 90 degrees and make a point on a dime, but not how that works. So he knew he was way too deep in, and I think decided I'll just take the penalty maybe then instead of going around a whole lap. But again, you can see he's still in the box, much like we saw with the incident earlier, because he has to serve penalties for missing pit road entry and driving through the grass. So just like that, we have cycled through pit stops and we are halfway home in the boosted 125. Sam Nieto has cycled out to be your race leader. You're looking at Bradley Burke, who came down pit road about 8 laps ago. He was one of the first cars to come in. He is down in 10th, but there's Nieto, 4.3 seconds ahead of Andrew Freitas. And I don't think Freitas, I don't think, Benefiel, Malik Ray, in fact, undercuts Daniel Eberhard to get ahead of him. Those cars who went as late as they could, Justin, I don't know if they could make it. Likely not, but we've seen some crazy moves pulled out in the past. But it is not a case of if, it's a case of when for Sam Nieto that he has to pick, because again, he went undercut those drivers by 6-7 laps. So he's already been out there for 12 laps. There is no way the 2 car makes it to the distance in this race. So it's good for the 2 to get out and lead some bonus points, but Ferdinand reeling him in, and I think the 8 is plausible on fuel. I don't think the 2 car is possible at all.
No way. No way. But how big the undercut was. Raya also in that same boat, I think, as well. Bradley Burke in that same boat. Grant Davis, Brian Chambliss. Really, your main lead cars are near the money. Eric Stanford ran out of gas, I think, on that pit entry. That's why he was so slow. And he was creeping 10 miles an hour under the speed limit to get to the box. He might make it as well. Ross Cato might make it, but he's lost a lot of time, of course. One driver who I know for sure can make it, though. David Washington got significant damage repairs done, Evan. He spent 2-3 laps in the pit box, yes, but say a couple cars run out of gas or have to come down and get pinned, he might be able to gain some extra points at the very end of the race. He took that damage repair, I think, because he was losing that much amount of time the 98 was to everybody else in the track. He's 26.
Yeah, that made his pit stop time obviously a lot longer. He could have gone out there, but I think he knew that he was that much slower than everybody else, so he just he took it. And David Washington, because of that, is 3 laps down. I feel like not getting the damage fixed, Justin, would have not been as bad as here comes Andrew Ferdinand to the bumper of Sam Nieto. Much faster. He will bring Adam Benefiel in tow, but both those cars going to get around the number 2 Ford, and there it is, Andrew Ferdinand back to the race lead. But back to the point on Washington, I mean, he gets the damage fixed, but he's 3 laps down. I mean, even if he was as off the pace as he was that whole run, Justin, you figure what? 15th, worst case scenario, right back at the lead lap. He's put himself behind an additional dozen cars, and he is now the lowest running playoff driver. Once upon a time, that was Dylan Jones who missed the start of this race. Dylan Jones is up to 16th position. Kyle Trudell with his issues in 24th. David Washington in P26 are those guys that are struggling.
And I just double-checked the reasoning here, too. I think Washington missed the Kona's pit exit entrance, which is, I think, part of the reason he did that. He probably thought, you know what, I'm going to lose a lap or 2 anyway. That could put him down to 22nd, 23rd. I may as well fix the damage, right? So now he's kind of in the situation where he needs this race to go absolutely insane for him to have a shot here. But that strategy call from Freenosh and Benefield looking fairly smart right now. They pulled 4 seconds on Eberhardt. Eberhardt, though, has more gas. They also have to keep in mind Malik Ray, while on a similar strategy, yes, has been lightning quick at the end of the runs today so far. He gained about a second or 2 in the final 10 laps of that first pit window.
Oh, and a caution at lap number 71. It's a spinner on the back straightaway. It is the 26 of Daniel Scott, and this is a whole new race. Scott immediately claiming responsibility for the caution, and I think he lost it all on his own.
Well, he just made this race a bit more crazy. Yeah, just drove on the seam. If you touch a bit of that seam right around the dotted lines on down, you're snapping it loose. That time he drifted the whole corner and just about saved it, but overcorrected right as he got to the apron. The thing is, with the paved backstretch for that apron, you spin on that section, it likely triggers a caution flag. The dangerous thing, though, is that was in front of your race leaders. Good heads up by the leaders to just dodge them, especially Freenosh, who just thread the needle there. My gosh.
Not much space to spare. See if we can get it on board. There's the look with Daniel Scott. You can see he thought he had it saved there, and right there, I mean, overcorrected up into traffic is the last thing you want to do, and oh, what a close call. That was the point where Freenosh was committed to the outside. He had no hope if Daniel Scott came up a little bit further. And I know that Daniel Scott probably, Justin, should have just locked it down. But credit that when he did get backwards, he locked up the brakes. Because if he doesn't do that, he obliterates Ferdinand.
And potentially obliterates some of his playoff hopes there. My goodness. Don't even think he left it there with how tight that was going to be. But here's the thing. Everybody's now on an even strategy and can make it on the gas now.
In this caution, it puts us at 51 laps to go and everybody down pit road. Again, they have 3 sets of tires in RSR Cup Series competition, but it looked like Ferdinand went maybe fuel only from the very front of the field, and that is definitely a call, Justin. Second off of pit road, Adam Benefiel on 4. I think maybe Fernandez hoping that this race gets a little chaotic because in theory he still has 2 sets of tires waiting on pit road for him, whereas everybody else only has 1. But I think I would have gone for the 4.
Dylan Jones also made that same call. I would have maybe 2, but the main thing I think about is he probably is hoping, say we get a longer run of about 20 laps, that's likely where everyone else then has to use a set or tries to stay out. He can take fresh tires and have an extra one in the bank along with Dylan Jones to try and get to the front and try and come away. If you get a late caution, then after that, say after another 10-lap run even, 15-lap run, they wheel their way on the bottom, take the lead in about 5-10 laps, likely take the checker flag 1-2 with the freshest tires in the track. It's a major, major gamble, though, where you're hoping it gets fairly crazy now that everyone's bunched back up.
And some drivers just asking for clarification that they cannot drop to below the white line into the apron on the restarts. That counts as a lane change. Drivers must hold their lane until they get to the start-finish. And it wasn't pit stops for everybody. Matt Mara, Eric Stanford, as you're on board. There he is with the 23 Amara, opting not to come down pit road. So they're on 13 and 14 lap old tires, respectively. Fernandez's are the same distance. And fresh tires for most of the cars there on back. You mentioned Jones opted for fuel only. That gains him 3 spots. He goes to 13th. So now we'll see if we can race this out. It'll be a 48 or so lap sprint to the end of this race. Does it stay green, Justin, with only 1 yellow behind us on the night? Or is this thing going to get wild?
With a few cars with old tires up here, I think we get the latter option because in some cases, drivers are well aware, can make moves fairly quickly, and there's a lot of relay. Some races I've seen this call end up causing calamity in the middle of the pack where you have, say, battle for 7th or 8th, you have someone drift up or hit the back end of somebody not expecting the pace once they're on the top line, significant contact. So, it's a high-risk, high-reward gamble where you're hoping you're not the incident. You get an incident, you get a couple incidents, and you have an extra tire set at the end of the race. Look at the bright side if you're Matt Mara. He's got a friend who stayed out, as mentioned, with Eric Stanford. The thing is, Stanford missed the pit lane. Matthews, I think he made this call on his own.
Yeah, they were joking about that. Matt said, thanks for not leaving me on my own. And Eric said, oh, you're welcome, but I just missed pit road. So we'll see how it plays. 2 non-playoff cars on the front row. Matt Mara, the control car, opts to go to the inside line for this restart, and he will be, the control car. Actually, it'll be the 19 to Stanford on the outside, I think, as the scoring is cycled. So no, it is Mara. Scoring keeps changing every 5 seconds. That's fine. But Mara is going to be on the inside, so he'll control this. And then 3 playoff cars behind: Andrew Fernandez, Adam Benefiel, and Daniel Everhart. The rest of the playoff cars: Grant Davis 9th, Michael Araya 11th, Dylan Jones 13th, Kyle Trudell 24th, and David Washington in 26th. It's a restart with 48 laps to go from Kansas.
Nice clean launch once again. The main thing's going to be, though, keep an eye on the bottom line. Those drivers on older tires may get swallowed up here.
Everybody making sure that they ride in the correct positions. You can see, remember, watch for that race to the outside. We saw that early. Mara is clear. Look at the Donnie car now charging on the inside. Here comes the 51 as well of Malik Ray. He'll fly through the middle to the outside of the 90, and it's Malik Ray trying to be a playoff spoiler again.
5 wide in the pack. Oh boy.
Oh, and it's Mara into the outside wall. You can see the reaction and a quick caution at lap 79.
That was coming. 4 wide works at Kansas. 5 wide, no way. No way. I don't think they realized there were 5 wide in one part. 2, it was not going to fit in the first place. Just there isn't enough space here on this track, even with the apron. Just one in the world.
It'll make for a cool screenshot, but what happened in turn number 1, they just ran out of room. And let's watch all of this develop. Mara's a mile ahead, but again, no tires. So Fernina is struggling as well without tires, but here comes the 90, here comes the 51. They're going to be ahead of everything. Just follow that 23. You can see they're already 3 wide behind. He holds the middle, and all those cars are faster. So Eberhard gets to the outside. It's Agno. Fill up to the very inside. Just a bit of a touch. And there is 3-4 cars involved, notably Andrew Fernina just in heavy damage in that incident. He takes 4. He's probably ahead of that when it happens. Instead, no tires. He's on the back foot for the restart, and he is a wrecked Ford Mustang.
That's the risk you take, right? You're hoping that you don't have an incident involving you, and if you do have one, you're at least able to avoid it. But I don't think you can take into account you go 5-1 into turn 1. That's one of the more crazier moves seen all week, and that's just not going to work in any situation. Now, I think that took everybody just about who tried that strategy with those cars in that incident to where none of them, I think, can stay on those old tires if they tried it because they either have no front clip or they don't want to get swallowed up here again.
And now it's a cautionary tale, if you would, because, these drivers obviously see what happens when you get just a little bit of variance in the tires, in the strategy is obviously very noticeable. And I think Daniel Eberhard really benefits from this yellow, because I think if we stay green, Malik Ray goes to the race lead. You could probably convince me that at the time of yellow, Malik Ray was in the race lead. In this race. It was awfully close in that side-by-side run down to turn number 1, but I think that Daniel Eberhard just gets it timed correctly. He was on the bottom, Justin, so Malik Ray probably takes the race lead, and I think that, listen, anytime you have a Coke Series driver on your bumper, you're going to be hard-pressed to hold him off, but at least Eberhard good for the moment, because of course he's got a lot to fight for here, looking for a win. Not to say that he'll go checkers or wreckers, because at least if you lose to Malik Ray, you still get a lot of points. It's a good night out at the racetrack still. So I don't think he's going to go for broke. We might see a bit of that at Martinsville later this round. Still, with that being said, maybe pushes Malik Ray, but I think we've seen Malik Ray's not afraid. So it'll be a fun game of chess between those two.
And Malik Ray's made it well known with how he's driven. He's just looking for victories. He's played spoiler in these playoffs already at tracks like Darlington. He's been quick here at tracks like this. I wouldn't be surprised if he tries to take the lead quickly on the high side and flip the script on Eberhard, take away that line down the front stretch after a couple laps, and move away from the rest of the field. He's been good on the long run. This race kind of fits his style now, where he's been one of the quickest cars in the short run as well, and willing to just about floor it. And yet, still able to find a decent balance on the tires. Get your popcorn out. I think this is going to be an entertaining race. The battle about fourth on back, though, is going to be crazy because you've got several non-playoff drivers there and several playoff drivers ready to shuffle out.
Daniel Scott also going to get an AOL and a black flag, 30-second stop-and-go penalty for changing lanes for the restart. So he will get a trip down to the pit road, which has to be served under green. Further up the road, Daniel Eberhard, Justin, as the lights go on top of the pace car, says that he wants the outside.
Interesting call here. If he times out well here and gets to the bottom by the start and finish line, he can box Ray in. That's the main thing. I think some of the drivers are wondering, how is everyone going to learn things? On the bright side, Ray has more confidence in this race than for tomorrow, it seems.
That's funny. That's actually what Daniel Eberhard and Malik Ray are talking about right now on the radio, is what he's looking to learn.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, the race tomorrow is going to see a lot of shades of this because the line moves up a little bit later to the top. A couple teams have gotten the bottom to work a little bit later, Evan. Others are scary loose for that race tomorrow. It was seen throughout the week in official racing because they were drifting off the corners, trying to make sure they didn't get too tight with the wind. This is going to be potentially some previews to what to see tomorrow. Potentially going to be a crazy run to see how things fare out here.
So restart coming up this time at turn number 4. Pace car going to be off and in as we go back racing with 42 laps to go from Kansas. We are underway. Daniel Eberhardt gets the jump that's big, but he's going to have to hold off the counterpunch when that trio behind him drafts up on him.
I'm surprised he didn't go straight to the white line, though. Decide to arc it on down. I think Ray's going to just try and blitz it down to the bottom side here and see if he can clear on by. This is going to be interesting. Eberhardt, I think, is going to try and stick it middle or top.
Malik Ray's going to go to the middle. It looks like the 83 Mission Benefield wanted to go 3 wide for the race lead-ops. Not to. Going to be a side-by-side battle for the point. First lap led for Malik Ray. Comes at lap number 84, but he's not done yet. Eberhardt still with that preferred lane.
I think Ray's going to try and park the bus here.
Lines up in front, it's his. Eberhardt gonna push him down the back straightaway. It is a trip to the championship 4 on the line for the 90. But a 3-time race winner in Malik Ray now squarely out in front.
Now this might be difficult to try and pass him because Ray's been fairly aggressive on some of these moves. Did a bit of a later arc towards the front straightaway to try and set up that momentum for the bottom of the apron. Now, he's also got Eberhardt along with Benefield, who are both going to walk this win bad, and I mean very bad. If they don't get a caution flag, this is going to be tough. If they get one, open up the floodgates for strategy.
1, 2, 3, 4, single filing out. Some action from the 44 on back. Agnell Phillip making a bit of a slide. Jared Mogard there. They are back to your screen. The bit of 2 wide, the 94. The only car on the bottom, along with Dylan Jones, who has had a long and slow climb up the scoring pylon, trying to go 3 wide, but the 94 having none of that, Justin. But Jones, for much of the early portion of this race, was the lowest running playoff car. Now he's 5th out of the 8 of them, and he wants some more, trying to get to single digits here.
Just a couple lap fresher tires. I don't think that's a major difference, but it's enough to try and wheel the bottom for an extra couple. That's getting him some of the track position back. But the key thing's going to be, he needs to do this cleanly. He knows now that several of his playoff drivers are several laps down. No front clips are absolutely demolished. In other words, this may be a great chance for him. Just a little bit impatient here with Joseph Tyson, his bit of damage from that earlier contact.
We've seen a handful of drivers try to work themselves through damage tonight. Joseph Tice recovering better than most. You're on board with Dylan Jones in the bottom left corner of your screen. Jones is behind him on track right now in 9th. We are nose to tail down the back straightaway. Jones wants to go on the attack, but I'm not sure even if he can clear the one, there's anywhere to go. He'll go all the way to the white line. He'll slide up. He's alongside Lariah, 2 car lengths ahead of where he started, but with no hole to fill, he stays low for now. I think he may have an opportunity here in turn 2 if he can get up high.
I think he's going to try it here. I don't think this is going to be even close to clearing on by, and this may be where it gives now for Jones. He's heated up the right front. The gap is now closed for him to try and move up, and it's getting a little argy-bargy now with the cars to his right.
He's got to hope that he finds a spot. Look at that. Barely a car length of room, but it's just not going to happen for Dylan Jones. And again, Lariah giving him space, which is what he's banking on. You can see how the 24 gets further away from Lariah because Lariah can't get down to the apron there. That opens up the hole for Dylan Jones. It's a car length and a half, a car length and a quarter. But again, the outside's better. That even though he can stretch it a little bit, Lariah gets there. Now he'll try to assume a spot ahead of Mogard, but no, staying on the bottom. And again, for right now, Dylan Jones isn't dropping back. Even though he's not finding a spot in line, they go 3 wide with Mar on the inside, Justin. He's not losing spots. But as these tires start to wear, it'll be more and more critical that he does find a home.
Yeah, and I think Mara being there did absolutely have the factor. Still, Jones, I'm surprised he's sticking it as well as he is right now. This isn't going to last for much longer as Mogard hit him.
The double O is right alongside there, and as Jones tried to fill the gap, the double O of Mogard said no, and he punted him off and into turn 3. Jones is an ace, so he's fine. He hangs on. You can see up the road some more drivers, but it is really Lariah the one that's given Dylan Jones the problems here. And I don't think he's going to find much more forgiveness in this car either, the 24 of Grant Davis. Of your top 7 cars, 5 of them are playoff drivers, and Dylan Jones finally makes the pass on Michael Araya, give him position number 6. Now Mogard wants to give it a try, not going to work out, and you know, we had a lot of discussions, and granted, the dirty air in the sim is nowhere near as bad as it is in real life, Justin, so it's always kind of the ideal version of this package. But it does take a lot of talent to do what Dylan Jones is trying to do now, where you tuck in line, you go to the bottom, and you kind of have to pick them off one by one by one. Didn't work that time, didn't work either for Jared Mogard, who tucks in line. He actually loses a spot through all of that. A couple, in fact, as Tice and the 94 Phillip got in front. So the foray to the bottom for the 00, unsuccessful.
Kind of contradicting his own sticker you've seen on the dash, right? Be smart.
Oh,
that wasn't smart. It's the leader.
Oh, and it's the one car involved, Malik Ray as well, and a yellow at lap 95. What happened?
I think Eberhardt got back to him, and Eberhardt tried to make a move and got into the back end of the 90 and accidentally bumped and hooked him.
He took him out. The 90 machine of Daniel Eberhardt. There it is on the bumper. Turns the 51 sideways. Malik Ray spins, and he really had no opportunity there, Justin, to get the car off the racetrack. I know we complimented Daniel Scott for locking it up, but I don't think there was any way in which Malik Ray doesn't end up in the road there. Here's the onboard look with the 90. And I think the timing's important, Justin. He hit him just as Malik Ray went from the apron to the racetrack, so I think that loosened the 51 up a bit. Normally, I think Eberhardt could get away with that bump, but the timing was all wrong on that, and that's a huge moment in this race because it takes, obviously, the fastest car in the field, Malik Ray, out of it. It's likely going to send Eberhardt to the back. Yes, it does, as he claims the yellow.
Yeah, that's going to have major implications. You're going to put Benefiel as the point car at this point. It opens up that strategy call I talked about for the various tire sets. Now it gets really intriguing here. Just wrong timing for the run, wrong positioning to the back bumper, not able to check it on up. Now there's damage to the 90, and on top of that, Ray not able to lock it on down with everything that was going on with the craziness. This race just got flipped upside down. Some drivers, for obvious reasons, have been staying out and expecting another caution to get themselves the fresher tires. Others taking the gamble here to give themselves the track position if anything else happens.
Yeah, it is not a universal decision. Your top 6 have stayed out on the racetrack. That's Benefiel, Chambliss, Jones, Davis, Burke, and Kaczynski. Of course, this could benefit Andrew Friedage. Justin, we were talking about he wanted to wear yellows, but of course, well, the 2 sets of tires on pit road don't do him much good when he has no front end on the race car. But, I mean, just looking at the top cars off pit road, Daniel Eberhardt, presumably taking his last set of 4. He's on those tires for the last 30 laps of the race. Doesn't really matter for him. He has to go to the end. How about Michael Araya, who's poised to be P7 for the restart on the freshest tires? Could Araya make something happen here and punch his ticket to the championship 4?
Yeah, this is going to be critical now for how this is all played out. We've seen how crazy it got with the older tires. It's even older tires now than what we've seen before. Not expecting tire spin, obviously. Unless you smash the gas hard, that can be a possibility here and there. The key thing's gonna be making sure you let the fresher tire drivers go, like Eberhardt, Laraya, Kamer, Mogart, Kalis, several of the lap down cars, because they're gonna be much quicker by about a second when these cars get up to speed. The upside is you having more trouble, though. That comes about, say, 10-15 laps later. It inverses, and they're going to be the fastest cars. And guess what? That would put them in the position to try and win the race. It's the massive gamble. That's even more bigger scale now than what Freenos tried a little bit. To where you make the wrong call here, you're losing a ton of points. You make the right call, you're going to be gaining a ton of points.
And a good opportunity under the yellow to remind you that if you want to get in on the RSR action, you can sign up today for the RealSimRacing Icebreaker Winter Series, featuring the NASCAR Xfinity Series cars, 10-week series, Monday nights here on RaceBot TV from November through January. If you want to sign up, go to RealSimRacing.org for more information. I think there's only about 13 or so spots left into the series. And in order to race, all you have to do is make a $10 donation to 3 Square Food Bank to help them in their efforts to support families through the COVID-19 pandemic. And you could be racing with us at the Monday nights coming up later this year in the winter. Well, we saw the move last restart. Adam Benefiel will replicate it. He will choose the outside for the restart. Chambliss going to be alongside in P2. Chambliss, again, I want to remind you, he does have the pink there, non-playoff car. So just a reminder on that.
The main thing's going to be how Benefiel takes this line. We've seen Eberhard not necessarily go full throttle first off to make sure he didn't burn up the tires from the top line, but arced it on down too, so he didn't quite get the full benefit of trying that line. I think if I'm Benefiel, once I get past the start and finish line, and if I'm fully clear by at least a car length, I'm moving down to the white line for the corner entry to make sure you defend a little bit to the cars behind. Then you move up to the wall in 3 and 4 to be aware of everybody that's going to be blistering up to you on the fresher tires here in just a minute. At least 7th on back on fresh tires for this restart.
Could it be the final one of the race? Pace car going to be down, 26 laps to go. A big opportunity for Adam Benefiel. Davis, Jones just behind him inside of the top 5, and it's Michael Araya in 8th, the highest playoff driver with fresh tires. Green flag in the air.
Still not moving it down quite yet, though. He might try the same arc, I think. Yes. Just a little bit earlier, much more better consistency on that positioning. Remember, though, too, Jones has a little bit fresher tires as well. Up at this front, along with Bradley Burke, that'll help them a bit for their speed off the jump. But they're going to even out fairly quickly as this run now progresses. Here comes Ryan on the fresher tires.
And look at the cars to the outside, though. So here comes the 88, or the 88-3 machine, I should say. But you mentioned Michael Araya in a world of his own on the fresh rubber. They're all kind of scattering to get around Brian Chambliss. Davis goes to the very outside, but Araya can make the passes on the bottom with 20-some-odd lap fresher tires than anybody else. Araya, that lead playoff car with the tires. Could this be a championship opening moment as he will fly by Benefiel Jones? New race leader for the first time tonight, it's Michael Araya.
Now it's going to be crucial for everybody else on the fresher tires to get through. Usually it takes a bit more time the more further back you go, because you're going to have to check up for cars with the different lines. You're going to need to check up down the straightaways with the different momentum. You need to keep your eyes open for other cars making moves. Jared Mogart, though, the second car of the fresh tires to get through. Kyle Kamer, the third. Sean Kalis, the fourth. Some of the air cars on that strategy are still yet to even get to the top 8.
Yeah, I mean, you can see just how much better those cars with the fresh rubber are, and no surprise that a lot of them have gotten through. You know, I think that if you didn't pit those 6 cars that stayed out, none of them going to be top 10 cars by the end of this race. Just don't see that happening. So cars that are fresh rubber are doing a good job. Look at this battle. 94 of Agnel Phillip on the inside line. He's trying to get around the 7 to Kyle Trudell. He'll do so. That's a battle between all cars on the same tires. And here comes Eberhard, by the way. Don't forget about the 90 up the road just a little bit. He will go 3 wide between Ross Cato and Trevin Valderrama. He had to take an EOL penalty for causing the yellow, Justin. He is already back to position 5.
Well, that just kind of helped force the hand of, I have to take tires and get damage repair done right to make sure that nose isn't completely crushed in and overheats the car, because that can happen if you're close to the back bumper with this machine. Only cost him about 2 seconds, but those 2 seconds going to be critical for how things go. Kyle Trudell, you have to understand too, needed to try something. He was a lucky dog a few laps, few cautions ago, Evan. Battle for the lead is on.
And Jared Bogard has caught Michael Araya. We'll follow those other battles as they take place through the field. But these are two cars on equal tires. Michael Araya needing this win to make himself locked into the championship for Jared Bogard, trying to play spoiler all over the bumper. And just to that Eberhardt point, incredible that Daniel Eberhardt, who was second in the running order when he caused that yellow, is now still the second highest playoff car. Who'd have thought that he'd be that high after causing a wreck? And it's just because he took the tires after the EOL and he's been strong. So you're on board with Jared Bogard challenging Michael Araya on the right-hand side and the outside view on the left, that time by 19 laps to go.
Or what's going to hurt him is a little bit of the dent. The other thing that's going to be crucial, don't do what you did last time and ignore your sticker on your dashboard. Look at it and say it out loud 25 times. Be smart. Because anything happens, you're going to have to be on full defensive mode. You need to basically think about that possibility, but also think about, can I build up enough momentum, and where can I build up the momentum to take away the outside line, down the front straightaway especially, to have a shot of this race win, because Araya is not an easy car to pass. He's been one of the quickest cars all season. He's one of the most respected drivers in the series. He's going to need to play this just right for any sort of shot. The downside for Bogard is he's just having to check a bit more than Araya is right now in the middle of 3 to make sure he doesn't smack that wall.
And somebody who did was Ross Cato. Cato, hard contact with the outside wall in turn 2, trying to pass Trevin Valderrama in a battle for 6th and 7th. Agnell Phillip now picking up that piece as the battle for the race lead rages on. Valderrama on fresh tires, aiming for a career best finish. He falls to 7th. Cato probably going to pass him. Valderrama likely to drop down into position number 8 before this thing is said and done. But, even for Araya, a good finish here is not the end of the road. But we saw what happened to Brian Chambers, Justin, when he thought he was going to win at Las Vegas. Didn't. Still got an okay finish. Had a bad race the next week out. Got into a wreck the week following. Took himself out of the championship when he was about a half a lap away from being locked in. So if you're Araya, you can think, hey, if Bogard gets past me, I'll be okay. And I'm not saying that he needs to, not put up a fight with the double O. I still think he's at a point where I would not trade the checkered flag for just the steering wheel. I think you got to keep the car in one piece. But this is Michael Araya's best opportunity to be Justin, to be a surprise driver into those top 4. And it sounds funny to say that about Araya because, you look at the stats this year, a 2-time race winner, led the regular season to points, for a lot of the time. But just in these playoffs, you expect Eberhardt, you expect Ferdinand, you expect Benefiel, and then probably David Washington, Kyle Trudell, or one more, Dylan Jones, right? I mean, it is hard to get to those top 4. So that's not to discredit the 2020 Araya's had, but I don't know if he's been one of the best 4 cars these last 6 weeks. This is his opportunity to make a statement.
Well, that's one of the fine parts of the playoff system, right, is if you can gain some good points in the round of 16, round of 12, and then show some speed and momentum in the later stages, the main picture is, as long as you're in the championship 4, you are in a good spot. Araya was one of the most red-hot drivers early on, even before he started getting wins on the calendar of it. So I think it's not quite the surprise that we're seeing him step up here tonight. One of his main specialties in the regular season was the mile-and-a-half tracks, where he was a top 5 car on those circuits. Guess where we haven't been much of the playoff picture? Mile-and-a-half circuits. This round kind of goes more towards his wheelhouse, in my opinion, than, say, what you had in the round 16 or the round of 12 where you had a road course race mixed in on top of things.
There's that battle we talked about with Valderrama and company on the right-hand side of your screen. He allowed some of the drivers to go on by really easily, Phillip and Trudell, but I don't know if there's any history between he and Ross Cato. Of course, Cato's not even battling him for position, but risked it all, and the 50 tried to squeeze it in between him, but he outside the wall got into the fence, so there might be a bit of bad blood. if the 50 gets back to him. But again, Valderrama started 30th up to P8. He's actually the biggest mover in this race. Now that Malik Ray had dropped out after being involved in an accident, Daniel Scott also to the garage, Eric Stanford also to the garage. A lot of drivers dropping out late here from Kansas. As Michael Araya starts to open his advantage up once more, he will take 10 laps to go this time.
He's pulling away a little bit now from both Mogard and the fastest car on the track prior to 5 laps ago, Daniel Eberhardt. He's pulling away. The damage is coming into play for Mogard for the long run. If this stays green, it's Araya's race to lose. In other words, he just needs to stay positive, Evan. Don't let anything flood his mind. Just hit your marks and take Mogard's sticker and put it in front of your face and say, be smart.
A good reminder, I would also put breathe on it as well if I was in control of Michael Araya's dash, because, you know, he knows that Mogard's there. And the thing about this racetrack is it's so easy to make a mistake. David Washington, not normally a driver prone to mistakes, he knocked the fence down to basically ruined his night. He's going to finish 21st as he's 21st on track right now. They'll finish as the lowest of the playoff drivers likely. The rest of your playoff cars all running top 13 in this race. Very, very bad result for him. He is going to be borderline on must-win territory as we head to Texas next Monday night. So for Araya as well, don't catch yourself looking in the rear view mirror. You can see how far ahead 1-2 are from everybody else. There's about 1.4 seconds to Kyle Cameron in third on back. Don't be looking in the mirror and make a mistake.
That's absolutely a great point, because you look too many times at the interval. You say, hear something pop on the radio, and you start creeping in of, oh boy, what's happening going on in the back of the field. You just start missing your marks if you don't keep your mind fully clear in some cases, depending on the driver's mindset. It's happened personally on my end a couple times, Evan. At this racetrack even, where I could be leading by a full second, lose about half a second because somebody is slower on the bottom of the racetrack, or you see a puff of smoke because somebody snapped a little bit down the apron and was able to catch it and save it. You can't afford to let any of those thoughts creep in your head of thinking, oh boy, the world is going the opposite direction for this race, rather, I should say, from what he needs it to go towards. Needs to stay positive, needs to breathe, needs to be smart, also needs to pass by Matthew Mara in his slow car.
He'll navigate around, and other than that, Mara is going to go to the inside. That's not the racing groove. No concern there. The next car that would even be, somewhat of similar pace that these leaders would have to deal with is already in the center of 3 and 4. So lap traffic should not be a concern. We thought with Ferdinand's close call before he was eventually involved in an incident when there was that spin out of 2. That doesn't mean you can relax. You have to be very attentive at all times, especially from the race lead. 5 laps to go for Michael Araya. Mentioned, of course, all the success that he has had so far this year. An early race win this year at the Homestead Miami Speedway. Went a long time without one. Won a clash in the playoffs at the Bristol Night Race to close the round of 16. And now is looking for a 3rd win of 2020 if he can do it. Would tie Malik Ray for 3rd most in this series.
This race going right towards direction. Kyle Trudell, we were talking about him having potential trouble with some of his damage before. This has worked out exactly how he needed to be able to gather up points. This has gone not the way Benefiel and Jones, I think, wanted to go with their call on staying out here. They were probably thinking there was going to be a late race caution by this mark, and they would have the fresh tires and go on through. At this mark, though, you get a green white checkered even, Evan. I don't think that's enough. It might be enough traffic now where drivers like Ryan can stay out and play defense if anything was to happen with under 3 to go here.
Yeah, these cars up front got a huge advantage with much less than, 26 lap difference on tires. So they would definitely have a benefit, but I think the traffic would hurt them, and you're right. The only car that those drivers who did not pit are still ahead of on track is Andrew Ferdinand, and he's driving a modified in 11th. Every other car that came down for fresh tires has since driven up to the field, and they ride in the top 8 positions on track right now. Popsicle 6 in the air, 2 laps to go. Lariah needs to see the white for this race to be official. Mogard, I think, is just too far behind now at a 2.5, 3 car length difference. And as long as the 44 doesn't throw it away, Lariah going to be headed to Phoenix.
Yeah, I don't think unless he tries a Carl Edwards type move that anything is going to stick for him to make the pass. Exactly what he wants to see, Lariah, is white flag. This time, it's official.
Complimented the team, Flat Out Motorsports, as they lead the championship for the team, coming into this evening on how impressive those cars have been this year. And Michael Lariah has been one of the breakout stars of 2020. Already a 2-time race winner this year. Here's Mogard to the inside. The last-ditched effort going to come up short, and Michael Lariah will fight for the Full Throttle Cup. He wins at Kansas.
Clean race, smart race, good race for Michael Lariah. What a win for him today. And what a recovery drive for drivers like Eberhardt, for Throttle, to gain valuable points here for the end of this race. Eberhardt took away third, Evan, right before the stripe.
That is big for the 90. That single point could make a difference, as he and Kyle Kamer traded positions down the back straightaway on the white flag lap of this race, squeezing each other up against the outside wall. And again, Lariah's third win going to tie him with Malik Ray, third most wins that have anybody this year, only topped by Daniel Eberhardt's 5 and Andrew Friedeich's 6. But what those two drivers don't have is a ticket to Phoenix, because the 44 is the first driver to lock in to the championship for. And Malik Ray, those drivers, limited schedules. Impressive, though, to tie a driver like that on trips to victory lane. But so impressed with what Michael Lariah has done in this 2020 campaign, Justin. And I don't know how many laps of practice I would be putting in, admittedly, at Texas and at Martinsville. Each round, we've said there's bonus points available for wins in the previous round. That's not going to happen at Phoenix. That race is going to be winner take all. I got a hunch he might turn some laps tonight.
Yeah, because Texas is official there as well, but I would get absolutely that preparation down for Phoenix to make sure you're all good to go, because if you feel like you're going to win the title, which he obviously now has that shot, you want to make sure where your marks are, how the setup's going to feel, how the car's going to run. You need to know all of that, and the more preparation you put in, Evan, the bigger it can be for when you get to Phoenix to show what speed he has. And keep in mind, short tracks he's also been fairly quick at throughout the season too.
The fixed setup series, you need to fight for every little bit you can. Michael Lariah, a 2-time race winner in these playoffs alone. Let's take a look at your Boosted.Club full race results. You see 5 of your playoff cars there. Michael Lariah has won. He has locked himself in to the championship 4, so he will fight for the championship. Daniel Eberhardt comes home 3rd. Kyle Throttle is 6th. Adam Benefield 9th. And Dylan Jones on those old tires as well in 10th.
11th spot tonight, Brian Chambliss with Andrew Freenosh getting up to 12th in his modified. Apparently was shocked on the radio how many spots he was able to still gain despite the fresher tires and no front clip. Grant Davis finished behind him in 13th by about a tenth of a second, with Bradley Burke finishing a couple tenths behind that in 14th. Michael Kaczynski, the last driver to lead lap. John Fowler, 1 lap down in 16th, along with John Rodden. Ross Cato could have recovered from his trouble in pit entry. He finishes 18th, 2 laps down. Matthew Mara's modified finishes 19th. David Washington, his penalty for an unsafe pit entry and speeding plus damage cost him a lot of points tonight, finishes 20th.
And continuing on through, you see the likes Soa, Mosier, a lot of these drivers involved in incidents as well. And from everybody, Joseph Tice at the back, I think, out of the race. So Malik Ray wrecked from the race lead. Eric Stanford involved in an accident. We saw Morano McBride involved in wrecks early. That is through position number 30. And at the very, very back, George does not take to the green flag. So it'll be a DNF, or a DNS, I suppose. But I suppose, since he did get in session, that maybe he'll be scored for 30th in points. Either way, didn't take to the green flag. We'll take a quick opportunity to step aside, and when we come back, we'll talk with your race winner and championship contender, Michael Lariah. You're watching the RealSimRacing Full Throttle Cup Series, powered by Boosted Playoffs on RaceSpot TV and the iRacing Esports Network.
out to the line, being chased, and it was Braden Johnson. Unbelievable finish. It was 1/1000th of a second between them.
Green flag in the air. We are racing in the 2020 24 Hours of Daytona.
They go door to door for the feature race lead here on the last lap of the race. Side by side for the race lead in the final corner at Homestead.
Down the back straightaway, 3 wide again for the race lead. This is unbelievable stuff here tonight.
Aloma is going to have to be very deep on the brakes, and he is very deep on the brakes. It's side by side through the corner. This is for the win.
It'll be side by side. Davies low, Ottinger high. To the very inside is Garrett Lowe. 4 wide at the stripe. The Audis win here on this outside line. Neck and neck. Who's going to back out? Does anyone back out? Verstappen starts to squeeze on the inside, and now he'll try and straight line it. Goes under the apron. Drag race to the line. It's so close to call. Kansas Speedway, where coverage of tonight's Full Throttle RealSimRacing Cup Series playoff race is powered by Boosted, the place where gamers and creators go to monetize digitally. Their team will build you a totally free e-commerce store and help get sponsorships for those looking to build their brand online. Boosted is the #1 sponsorship platform for esports influencers. Join their team and visit boosted.club for more information. We're back live after the Boosted.Club 125. Let's head down to RealSimRacing Victory Lane as we get set to chat with some of our top finishers, beginning, of course, with tonight's race winner, Michael Araya. Michael, congratulations on the race win. #3 for you on the year, but something tells me this has got to be the biggest one of the season so far because you're the first driver locked in to that Phoenix finale. Congrats.
Thank you. Yeah, it feels amazing to be locked in. Earlier in the race, I felt like it was out to lunch there. I was just trying to survive mainly because I didn't get a good qualifying run in, and I was right in the hornet's nest, so I was kind of being more conservative, running the low line in both ends of the track, knowing that those stack ups on the top were going to come, and just kind of get myself, halfway through the race there, and then we had a couple cautions, which were good, and I hit it right with pit road strategy. But, yeah, this is a huge win for me, just to be able to lock myself into the last round. You never know what's going to happen in these races. I mean, you could be running up front the whole time. You can get a late race caution, and something happens. You could easily wind up in a wreck or miss it on strategy. So it's like, what a sigh of relief. And I feel like I have the speed. I feel like I've been so consistent this year that I deserve to be in the Final Four, and I'm really glad that I could make it happen.
And of course, this race started mid-pack in 14th position, and for a lot of the time we were kind of talking about 3 or 4 playoff guys, not including yourself, breaking away. So what would you look back on in this one as kind of the turning point where, you kind of acknowledge for the first time, I've got a real good look at winning this thing? Did it simply just come down to making that right strategy call late and being kind of the lead guy on those fresh tires?
Yeah, that was huge. I thought I was going to end up the second guy on the freshest tires behind Daniel there, but looks like he got a penalty or claimed a caution or something. So that in turn made me the first guy on fresh tires lining up behind the guys that stayed out. And at that point, I knew I had a really good shot at this thing, but I just had to make sure that I didn't get hung up behind those guys. And luckily, they ran enough laps where they wanted to migrate up to the top line pretty quickly, and that gave me an opening just to run the bottom line wide open and get the lead there. But I tell you what, clean air, like the race yesterday, was key. That's all that really mattered. As long as you hit your marks and you didn't overdrive the corners of the turn and slide up and kind of hit the wall or brush into it, you were golden. As long as you were running the top line. And I was doing, looking out my mirror, just seeing if Jared was going to get any big runs, and he did one time, and I was able to make sure that he didn't get to my outside. And other than that, just hitting my marks and making no mistakes. But it's kind of a shame. I wish that it wasn't so aero dependent, and I wish the bottom was a little bit stronger here at Kansas. But you got to do what you got to do to win these things.
So now that you don't have to worry going into Texas, and I think mainly worry going into Martinsville, which is going to be a wild one to close out this round, what do the next couple of weeks look like? Do you dedicate the time that you would have practiced for those tracks into Phoenix? Because there's nothing else you can get. You can't carry any bonus points. There's nothing of that sort. It's just all going to come down to making sure that you're the highest of those championship four when we get out to Phoenix.
Yeah, this definitely changes everything. I'm going to start putting some practice into Phoenix immediately and just see what I can learn there. But going into these next two races in this round, it's still going to be really important. I take these two races and look at it as a way to stay fresh as far as execution. You got to be on top of your game with strategy in this league. Tonight's a great example. Just seeing the opportunity there to come in and pit, knowing what the circumstances were. That's what ultimately won me the race tonight. And I go forward with that same mentality, just go through the races and just execute to the best of my ability. But yeah, it's just great. It's such a sigh of relief being able to lock myself in. And I'm really looking forward to the race at Phoenix.
We'll let you go celebrate this win, and we'll let you get to that practice as well, Michael. But congratulations on the race win here tonight. Thanks for racing with us on Mondays, and we'll catch you, if not in the next 2 weeks. We'll certainly talk in Phoenix.
All right, Evan. Thank you.
The race winner tonight in the Boosted Club 125. We'll pass things down the road. Justin, you'll be standing by with our second-place finisher who came so close to playing spoiler tonight. You're talking about Jared Bogard.
Yes, his best race in a long while this season. Jared, first things first, how are you feeling? Second place run, your best finish in months.
Yeah, we'll take it. I think it's our best finish of the year. So played the strategy right, or played the strategy, and it worked out in our favor. And we gave her everything we had. We just came up a little short. We were a little tight, 3 and 4 there, and just couldn't get a good run on Michael there at the end.
Yeah, one of the things discussed by Michael is he felt like the clean air was a bit of a factor in all that. You also had a bit of front nose damage that crushed a bit of the splitter. How big was the dirty air and the damage, in your opinion, for this fight, and what do you feel you could have done to try and adjust for that if you had another chance to fight for the win?
I honestly didn't even know I had nose damage, so I guess that might have been a little bit of a factor, but I don't really know. To me, the air really didn't play much of a factor. This track is such a one-lane racetrack that, you kind of got to get in line and run after a while. I think if I could go back and do it differently, I'd probably take fuel on that final stop and took no fuel to try and tighten this up a little bit, which it did, but I think it tightened this up too much there, probably the last 10 laps or so.
Yeah, if you don't put the fuel in the car, of course, it lifts up the back end, can make it tight as the run goes on. Open conditions, you need to adjust for that normally. But, of course, Texas is next. That's going to also be an intriguing race. That, in some cases, especially if you think back to last year, seeing 4 or 5 wide action, in some cases caused calamity. Your thoughts on Texas?
Yeah, we ran well earlier in the year there. I think we finished 3rd, which was our best finish with this series. So looking forward to getting back there. They repaved it, so it's pretty much wide open. Except for 1 or 2, you got to back off a little bit, but wide open, draft, all that good stuff. So it's going to be like this, but should produce a little bit better racing next week.
Thank you very much for your time. Congratulations on the top 3 run this evening.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to thank my sponsors, quick. Ben at Dirt Race Central, I buy Power Computers, Flash and Go Graphics, Future Race Reports, and all the boards on my RealSimRacing Network. And thank you guys for the lead and doing the broadcast. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time, Jared.
Thanks.
That's Jared Mogart coming home second tonight. Also standing by with the third place finisher, Daniel Eberhard, who recovered from an EOL penalty after a collision with Malik Ray. First things first, what happened there, Daniel?
I was going through the tri-oval and I was catching Malik really quick, and I didn't want to let off the gas to let Adam get a big run right there, because then you have to block him and you make that crazy block. And Malik was blocking a little bit and come back up off the apron, and when I hit him, I was trying to hit him square, and it just jarred his car just a little bit higher than I want him to be, and I guess I just got on the left rear and just hooked him around, and I apologized to him, and really apologetic. I feel bad for hitting him. I didn't mean to wreck him or anything like that. I was just trying to give him a bump, and I was pretty happy he understood about that, and he had every right to be upset about it. I felt terrible about it, and whoever else it took out with that wreck.
Yeah, that incident collected a few playoff drivers of note, including Andrew Freenosh and a few others there, but you were able to recover that, though, during the final run. How difficult was it to try and gain all the time back, because it seemed that you evened out at about 2 seconds back of the main pack once you're clear of everybody?
I hit the wall. Back there trying to get the camera, and hitting the wall on these things just kills it with how the package is. And camera was quick, and when I came around him, I got up to him. I guess he burned his stuff up, and I tried to get around him on the outside, and luckily he could. The thing is to pinch me in the wall, but him being a teammate, I knew he wouldn't do it. But he was racing me hard, but no, it's really tough to drive through the field. But I felt like if I didn't hit the wall, I might catch him. But Lariah and them not having to deal with, me having the EOL penalty and having to pass also lap traffic, and you having to stay behind people and not pass below the apron and everything for the lane changes, which is very understandable. It makes it real tough. It's not like an official race where you can just go hammer down. And but coming through the field, and that's what tires do. I mean, that they need to edit it a little bit. I don't mind the whole tire limits and all that, but they need to edit the grip on some of these tracks. Like Atlanta would be a very abrasive, and that would happen at Atlanta, but like Kansas with the new pavement, I just don't see how Benefield and Jones are that slow, even with the 10-lap change in tires.
Okay, let's turn things over to another track, though, that's coming up, Texas. Your thoughts on that one?
I think you're going to get about the same kind of racing. It's going to be packaged out where you're going to be tight on each other. But the good thing is this Texas is a little bit flatter of a track, and I think sooner or later tires will come into handling. I don't think the outside lane thing at Kansas will not happen on the bottom at Texas. I think that somebody will be able to drive away after about 30 laps.
Thank you very much for your time. Congratulations on the strong run to the 90 this evening.
Thank you.
Daniel Eberhard, rounding out your top three this evening, having a very competitive race this evening, but in the end, strategy was king.
It was, and listen, Michael Lariah wasn't off the pace at all really in this race, right? But he even admitted it wasn't a race-winning car for majority of the evening. He makes that right strategy decision when it matters the most. Even the driver who you just talked to in Daniel Eberhard got penalized, late in this race, still ends up as the second highest of the playoff cars. So you can overcome some adversity, but it certainly is important to be at your best and to make the right call when it mattered the most. And I said, Michael Lariah has been one of the top 4 cars, I think, this season, but not necessarily one of the top 4 cars these playoffs. He locks himself into the championship. That's a big up, obviously.
Yeah, going to be absolutely huge. He said it himself. He felt like he can get himself there, and I was honestly feeling the same way much of the playoffs. He's been a top 10 car, yes, but as you were talking about, you need top 5s. Tonight, finally was able to step it on up. But the crazy thing is, think about this. If anything was to happen, say with 10 laps to go, to theorize, we're talking about potentially Adam Benefield in victory lane. That was the risk of staying out on the racetrack, is you're hoping something happens in the pack, or you get some type of caution late, so you're able to blitz your way back through the field and pass by everyone on the old tires if you have enough laps. That didn't happen. The risk didn't pay off for them, and guess what? They lost a fair amount of points now, and they're going to have to be a little more thoughtful on how to points race and how to be aggressive, especially for the fight for the lead when we go to Texas.
It's very noticeable when that strategy call comes late. Let's take a look at your updated championship standings, and man, is that tight. So Michael Araya gets the win. He locks himself in. He will race for the championship. Eberhardt, again, only 3 points off of Araya, but the big thing is to look at where they are in relation to fifth. So he is some 9 points ahead of Benefield. Trudell, only 2. Faridaj in by just 1. I consider a good takeaway for the 88 machine. Granted that they had a poor finish. Remember, Eberhardt started with a 3-point bonus to everybody else. And the drivers on the hot seat, Adam Benefield and Dylan Jones, Grant Davis, David Washington. Admittedly, I would put Benefield, Jones, and Washington. If I had to do, like a fantasy bracket, I'd be hard-pressed to not keep at least 2, if not 3 of those names out of my top 4. They are all in that red box as we head to the Texas Motor Speedway, and let's kind of preview that one, Justin. Very different, obviously, than what we saw here tonight.
More bottom-dominated track, and as talked about by Daniel Eberhardt, there's a chance people can break away there, though it's not as easy as a track as Kansas, and it's not as draft-dependent, so to speak, because turn 1, you have to back it down a fair bit because it's much more flatter. There is a wider corner arc. It's harder to enter the corner, give or take, even around there. 3 and 4. It's basically full throttle in that section. You have to carry the momentum around the track. So tire saving is going to be very crucial, I think, Evan, for that race. Wouldn't be surprised to see people back it down a lot the first 5-10 laps to make sure they're good for the rest of the run. But the drivers who say go full throttle into the corners or even 3/4 throttle into turn 1 and 2 per se end up dropping back a lot. So there's going to be a lot of thoughts going through some of the minds of the drivers as the race goes on yet again, Evan. I still think, though, at the same time, there's going to be some crazy parts because with how difficult it can be to pass on the longer run in some cases at tracks like Texas, you may see drivers try and be fairly bold, especially if we get a late race restart.
And I know it's kind of like a cliche to say, and oftentimes I think they say it's not your grandma's this or it's not your parents' this. This ain't Texas that you're used to just from 2 years ago, right? It's a much newer scan. It races very, very differently. And it's no different than a new track coming to the service. You figure it out and you get used to it. I think a lot of drivers were so used to the way that Texas used to race that they're still in the process of kind of figuring out how the new Texas races, and it just so happens to be the third to last race of this 2020 campaign. But until then and until next Monday night, that's it for us here tonight, as round number 27, 2020, has now fallen into our rear view mirror. So as always, I want to thank all of you at home for tuning in and joining us on behalf of our entire team at RealSimRacing and at RaceSpot TV. For our producer Hugo Luis, for Justin Prince and myself, Evan Pasoko, I want to thank you for tuning in and congratulate Michael Araya, first driver locked in to the Championship 4. This championship battle going to continue, and it is back next week, next time out on Monday, October the 26th. It is a 9 o'clock Eastern time start, as always, from the virtual Texas Motor Speedway, right here on RaceSpot TV and the iRacing Esports Network. We march on with the Full Throttle Cup Series powered by Boosted Playoffs. We'll see you next Monday from Texas.